Hi, and welcome everyone to the second event today of our best practices for AWS. So earlier today, we discussed around our best practices for Azure. Now we're going to move on to AWS, but quite conscious that most customers have a multi-cloud environment. So the kind of discussion points could be relevant for both. Just before I start and go over the agenda, in our earlier sessions, we did have some technical issues with some buffering. I think it was down to the kind of ISV provider, actually. So if you are having issues currently, you can reduce the buffering side of things. In the bottom right-hand corner of your screen, there's a little cog, and you can reduce the resolution there. So if you are having issues, just play around with it, and it will be fine. The actual recording makes no difference, so you'll get a full HD view in if you want to view it after the session. So I guess why are we here? We're running 3 days of this event, and I guess we decided to run this because each cloud is unique. So they're all very different, and we wanted to have multiple conversations, multiple different points of value that we can provide back to you. So whether you're looking at a migration to your cloud platforms, streaming that kind of security posture, or kind of enabling you to move to M365 or other cloud applications seamlessly, then we've hopefully got a presentation that suits all of you. We're obviously joined by a number of expertise in kind of architecture and security, and hopefully you'll see a lot of value from this. And the presentations will be live and recorded, obviously, for you to watch in the future. Bit of housekeeping. Oh, sorry, something happened to my clicker. Bit of housekeeping. The fire exits, you probably heard this multiple times on virtual events, are actually in your house nowadays. So please use those if they have any incidents. But throughout every single presentation, there'll be some polls, and we encourage you to ask questions in the Q&A chat box, which is available on your screen. Please interact. I'll be able to see the questions you're posing, and I'll be able to provide them to the presenters. Feedback is encouraged as well at the end. So there is a short survey which you can take actually during the session. And there is a kind of £100 shopping prize draw for everyone that completes that. So an introduction to today's session. So I'm going to give you a quick tour on the Bytes security division, give you a little bit of our background if you haven't heard of us before. And then I'm going to hand over to Simon Walker, who heads up our cloud services division, and Darren Sharp from AWS, talking about the marketplace and really kind of general security techniques, concerns around cloud environments. And then we're going to hand over to our two of our vendors joined us today. So Stuart Green from Checkpoint and Justin Harris from CrowdStrike, who are going to talk about network security, workload security, and the kind of considerations you need to take place, but how they integrate really with AWS. That is a key point to the whole conversation here. It's kind of a collaboration of different cloud providers, different technology to ensure that you're seeing everything and also that you're securing everything in the best way possible. At the end, we're obviously going to go to a Q&A, an open panel with all the presenters, and hopefully get some questions that you've put throughout the presentations. So a bit about us. So my name's Luke Kiernan. So I'm the head of security alliances at Bytes. I've been at Bytes for 8 years now, and we have a very large security team that have a very rounded security proposition, ranging from pre-sales consultants, security engineers, support desk engineers, cyber consulting, and we have a breadth of history in all of these different areas, and we feel we can really add value to each of our customers' conversations. So there's over 65 of us in the team. We all support all of your account managers, and we deliver over £100 million worth of security projects each year. So we really do feel like we've got a well-rounded proposition, and this is our history. So we've been in the security industry for over 20 years now. And one of our biggest changes happened last year, where we merged two big security divisions within Bytes, and we've become one bigger team, offering a very consolidated, consistent approach to our conversations with our customers around security. And that's integrated across all of the different divisions at Bytes. So our Microsoft teams, our AWS teams, our cloud teams, our data center teams, because security touches all of these different remits. And we want to have a more rounded conversation that integrates with all the different conversations you're having. So just a kind of 50,000-foot overview of our proposition. So starting with the top, we have a very good value-added cyber consulting division, which is headed up by our CISO, Steve Marshall. All of his consultants, engineers, very accredited in the industry, very experienced. And this kind of division looks at everything outside of kind of solution selling. It's more around pen testing, security audits, breach forensic, incident response. We are part of the ISF framework as well, so we have a real good understanding of the market, understanding of the landscape, and can really understand your vertical as well to help you kind of benchmark where you are. So a lot of experience in that division, and that is rapidly growing at the moment. We obviously have our kind of procurement services, so we are top tier partner across most of our security vendors, and that offers customers obviously commercial advantage, but more importantly, technical reach and really industry knowledge. We come at it from a very vendor agnostic model. So we have a breadth of experience across multiple vendors to ensure that the right ones are correct for your business and your challenges. Our professional services team is kind of made up of two areas. So our telephone support desk and our implementation services. So we can offer deployment, installation, migration, health checks, training and knowledge transfer within this highly accredited team. And then last but not least, which we're seeing a big trend in, is our managed security services division. So we can offer full managed SOC, NOC, NDR, managed firewall, managed kind of cloud security and compliance offerings, which is relevant for today, and also managed digital risk and threat intelligence, which is becoming more of a hot topic these days, to understand not only what's going on inside your environment, but what's going outside your environment. So hopefully that gives you a kind of a rounded overview of our proposition. So why are we here today? Just before I hand over to Simon, just going to go through kind of two slides, really very kind of understanding of why we're here. I'm sure you've seen this before, but from an industry understanding, the top three cloud security challenges are security, so misconfigurations or complex attacks, compliance in the ever-changing dynamic environment of a cloud workload. How do you keep compliance of that? And when there are so many different compliance frameworks, how do you kind of keep your head on top of where things are going? And visibility, I mean, like it says there, you can't secure what you can't see. So having a better understanding of where the workloads are, where the networks are, where the infrastructure is, who's spinning up workloads when, and are they secure is kind of a key point to kind of today's discussion. And another Gartner comment, but a high percentage, but they do estimate that over 95% of cloud breaches will occur in the next 2 years to human error or configuration mistakes. And we are human, but it's because there's this hyper dynamic cloud environment is always moving, always changing. It's very, very useful, but it also needs to be looked at from a secure angle as well, right from the beginning, not an afterthought. So hopefully that gives you an overview of why we're here today. So I'm just going to pass you over to Simon from our AWS team.
Yeah, thanks, guys. So we're going to cover off a bit about AWS Marketplace, and Darren's going to take over on that one. And then following that, I'm going to get a bit of information around the practice at Bytes for AWS and talk about some of the native security that comes with Amazon, but also some of the main gaps. But I'll hand over to Darren for now to talk about Marketplace.
Thanks, Simon and Luke. Appreciate it, and thanks for having me here today. So by way of introduction, my name's Darren Sharp. I work within AWS Marketplace within our channel partner organization. So, very pleased to be working with Bytes on helping them with their software transformation for customers like themselves, using AWS Marketplace as the mechanism of that transformation. So appreciate, we're here to talk about security today. I'd like to put a bit of a security wrapper around this. But we'll start easy. This is not going to be technical, but I'd like to give you an overview as to how our digital marketplace solution is helping people migrate to AWS in a secure way. So look, super complicated slide to start with. Don't be scared by this. The headline here is we're actually talking about procurement transformation. Now, might not be of interest to to those of you that are very technical and a specialist in your field in terms of either premise or cloud security. However, this is a problem in every business that we know today. So what you're looking at here is, a marketeer's view of a decision-making cycle when evaluating solutions, and that could be anywhere. But this journey from starting to recognize that you need to do something to actually making a purchasing decision is something that digital marketplaces are, as a whole, are helping you, the customer, with. And AWS Marketplace, being a leader in cloud marketplaces, is one that should certainly help you from a curated catalog perspective start to make some of these decisions. So we know from discussion with our clients that, particularly in security, but in every IT category, what most businesses are doing is they are evaluating probably 2 to 3 vendors to see what their cloud posture is. And I'm pleased to see some of the most advanced partners of Bytes and security in the cloud and AWS Marketplace partners in Checkpoint and CrowdStrike here today that are an example of those partners. But what I mean by that evaluation piece is, you as a customer, if you are a particular vendor, on-premise firewall vendor or purchaser of that firewall solution, you're probably looking at, of course, what that premise firewall is. But when you're getting to cloud, you may not be looking at the cloud's native tools. You're probably looking at some of the best-in-class security solutions from the likes of CrowdStrike, Checkpoint, and you're making that evaluation based on what their cloud posture is, as we see these organizations at very different levels in some cases. So the digital marketplace solution is there to accelerate some of this. So let's dig in a bit more detail. What we're looking at on the left here is our view of a typical IT infrastructure, with a software slant, of course. We might say that in a decent mid-sized organization or long-tail enterprise, you might have 1,000 different applications. We know that a lot of what you have is commercial off-the-shelf software, mixed with some in-house developed applications. Now, the point we're trying to get to here is there is an opportunity for rationalization. The state on the right-hand side, this more modernized application delivery world, is what businesses are demanding to get more agility out of their IT infrastructure. And we're not saying that everybody is in every one of these delivery methodologies today, but we certainly know that there is some efficiencies through looking to these delivery mechanisms to get more from that software estate. And that's not just financially, that's in terms of what that piece of software is delivering for your business. Also think about this from the ISV perspective, the independent software vendor perspective. Look at your ISV partnerships that you have as a company today, and you'll see they are starting to work towards more of a cloud delivery model. And that's for their own efficiencies and delivery to market. So more agile ways of delivering software like SaaS, like a containers environment. Are these more modernized application delivery methods that that we know you're looking towards? And it's we know here again by audition or by conversation that customers like many of you are looking to get the same elasticity out of your software estate as you may be getting from your cloud provider already. So again, it's it's a conversation point really. Look at your top 30 to 50 enterprise vendors that are important to your business, and start to analyze, are they giving you best in class service and that elasticity of how you're able to consume those models. So let's talk about what AWS Marketplace isn't. First of all, if you haven't looked at it before, I'd encourage you to go and have a look. aws.amazon.com/marketplace. We are not going to be transacting the licensing from the big 5, as we'd see at the top of this pyramid here. That's Microsoft, Oracle, SAP, IBM, etc. That's about half of the $560 billion IT market that we see this year. Doesn't mean that we won't carry the workload in AWS. I'm sure some of you will be aware of the statistics. We're very good at that. A publicly available statistic that, in terms of carrying Microsoft workloads, actually 58% of all the Microsoft workloads that are already in the cloud are actually hosted by AWS, which is a phenomenal statistic. So I'm just calling out here. Don't think that that's not going to be that we're not going to host the workload. We're very good at it and a market leader in hosting those workloads. However, we're not going to transact the licensing. That's something that Bytes are probably doing for you already, we hope, through some kind of enterprise licensing agreement. We are, however, about your 50 critical vendors, of which in many cases, Checkpoint and CrowdStrike are obviously going to be in that list for you. But that's the 50 vendors that you run your business on. That's your 50 traditional IT vendors that are, probably somewhere between premise and cloud, but are actually running business critical services for you or securing those workloads. So you should be able to manage your software environment with a partner like Bytes using AWS Marketplace as a single pane of glass to manage those entitlements and that service delivery. And this is a transitioning world. We're very pleased that Bytes is moving towards a marketplace skilled consulting partner to be able to deliver all the good things that they do for you today in terms of software lifecycle management, professional services delivery, cost consolidation, to be able to do all those good things with this accelerated mechanism that's AWS Marketplace. You are going to find this long tail of vendors underneath. Think about what Amazon.com does for you. As an initial concept, in terms of finding things, maybe making synergies for what you've bought previously, actually helping you on that buying journey and getting them into you in a super quick way. So we can start there. That's where AWS Marketplace can start, and thereafter it becomes a business tool. But this long tail of vendors underneath, you're actually going to find probably this digital marketplace world is going to help your search and selection of more relevant vendors for you. And some of those vendors will not be using a traditional route to market. They're only going to be dealing with digital marketplaces. And the reason why is that previous slide, actually more agile service delivery models. Those up and coming IT vendors don't want to be building elastic metering and billing solutions. They're relying on digital marketplaces to manage that world for them and get to customers in a very agile service delivery way. So let's dig in and actually look at what this means for us. As I say, think about Amazon.com, for that analogy of Amazon.com for enterprise software, but thereafter a number of tools that's going to help you as a business with migration. We see AWS Marketplace and your partnership with Bytes as being a migration accelerator. And Marketplace is there as a curated catalog of software. It's not all paid. You're going to see that some of this is free. So this is operating system, but it's a curated set of images or AMIs or SaaS entitlement that will hopefully help you migrate. We also support bring your own license options, where if you already have the license in a premise world, you can use that bring your own license entitlement to help that migration into AWS. And there's reasons why we do that. That bring your own license option, we hope will help you migrate that workload to AWS without additional cost. But thereafter, there is some commercial benefits to actually looking to procure through AWS Marketplace. And that's what we're going to get to now in the value that Bytes can bring here. So let's just have a look at what this looks like. Here's a list of Checkpoint instances in AWS Marketplace. So go and have a look, aws.amazon.com/marketplace. You'll see lots of different Checkpoint services here, and we'll get to some CrowdStrike in a minute. So we're covering both vendors equally. But again, I'd encourage you to go and have a look. When we drill into this next-gen firewall product here, the subscription option is actually really easy. If you're logged in with an AWS account, you can click to subscribe, and you can go and get access to that firewall product immediately to deploy within your AWS infrastructure. It's super quick, super agile. Now, here's the value piece, because at the moment you're probably thinking, well, what's Bytes got to do with this? Well, let's absolutely cover that, because your partnership with your preferred partner here, like Bytes, is even more critical today than it may have been historically. But look at what your independent software vendors are doing on the left-hand side. All those vendors that Luke talked about at the beginning that this security practice is accredited to are seeing some agility in this new service delivery model through digital marketplaces. They are able to publish applications really quickly to a large customer base that's global and actually get really concise reporting over what's being deployed where. That's the left-hand side of this slide. You, the customer, should absolutely be able to support your enterprise vendors, get search and selection for new vendors, but find, try, test, and deploy this world in a super quick and agile way. So accelerating this journey, driving cost out of this process, but at a fixed price that's within Marketplace. We also have some tools that support this world. This is where we come away from the Amazon.com analogy. We can support the car analogy here, those that want to go fast or those that want to go a bit slow in a governed and guardrailed way. So we have some tools that will support either mechanism here. You can go as fast as you want, or actually we have some procurement system integration or things like private marketplace that will allow us to put some governance and guardrails around this world for you. So what's the mechanism that gets the partner involved, and what's the mechanism that is going to help you get best value from your independent software vendors? And that's this private offer process. So actually what we're talking about here is the mechanism along the bottom, which is where Bytes is still able to be trusted advisor, professional services deliverer, software lifecycle management organization, do all those good things for you about advising of best security and making those vendor connections for you, but still be the seller of record in this super fast agent accounting process. So actually, the efficiencies here are, in many cases, you can be choosing to either get a bill straight from AWS or from Bytes, or actually Bytes can be issuing offers into your accounts for you to go and subscribe to. So let's go and have a look at that. Here you could see an offer from Bytes, and this is, we're looking at a CrowdStrike offer here. Very simply, we've taken your AWS account ID, or Bytes have. Bytes are pre-authorized for, a level of CrowdStrike products here. And they've issued you a right to buy, a right to use this CrowdStrike product. And the process is exactly the same. This is Bytes using their best-in-class security practice to go and deliver this private offer to you, for you to go and create this contract with Bytes as the seller of record managing this world for you, but you still getting the best-in-class service from this CrowdStrike solution. And it's exactly the same for Checkpoint and the other vendors that they're in AWS Marketplace. Those that are choosing to work within CPPO, consulting partner private offers, the ones that are supporting the partner ecosystem. And, we're still driving cost out of this for you. This is a very cost-efficient service delivery model. But it's still giving you that access to search and selection. So it's about finding, trying, and testing stuff. And as you get to those enterprise subscriptions, $1,000 plus, it's still working with Bytes to actually get some advice and curation as to how they can deliver that offer for you really quickly. It's a whistle-stop tour of AWS Marketplace in terms of what it does. So there's probably a deeper dive to be done at some point. But look, be aware of some of the tooling that sits around this here that Bytes can help you with, because this is about procurement transformation and this next generation channel that Bytes is here for you as a partner of AWS Marketplace and dual partners of the likes of Checkpoint and CrowdStrike. So some of the tools in here, apologies, I'll just jump back a second there we go. Bit trigger happy. So some of the other tools that are around here that will help you are things like enterprise contract for Marketplace. That's a consolidated set of terms from the likes of Checkpoint, CrowdStrike, and 400 and something other ISVs that your legal department will only have to redline once. And once they've done that redlining, and there's no commitment to actually purchase anything, but once Bytes have helped you with that enterprise contract for Marketplace sign off, you are then pre-authorized to go and take an offer from another ISV without having to go through that redlining process. That should be driving weeks out of your procurement process when you're looking at who's in this club of enterprise contract through Marketplace and Bytes. There's then some other efficiencies in terms of things like flexible payment scheduler, which allows us to stage payments, increase credit terms, and actually give some value in terms of how you're managing the financial structure of your private offers. And lots of other tools that are available as well, particularly things like private marketplace, which can help your procurement function deliver governance and guardrails. We know that procurement is becoming decentralized. In many cases, we know that the IT function is becoming decentralized. We know the builders are going and building. So we don't want to stop that, but we want to make sure that you've got some simple tools within the AWS Marketplace shell that will allow you to go and to deploy a curated set of products that are curated maybe by Bytes or maybe by yourself as an organization. But it's a simple workflow that doesn't cost anything to use, a simple workflow for your procurement leads to help you manage what can be deployed. So again, opportunity for deeper dive at another point. So we won't go too deep into this, but look, there's lots of features of the product, why Bytes is focusing on AWS Marketplace and this consulting partner private offer mechanism. There's some terms here that we could spend a lot of time on, but essentially we're talking about number 1 and 2. This is removing procurement friction. It's getting access to all the great solutions that Stuart's going to talk to you about from a threat prevention perspective and Justin from a workload security perspective. It's getting that trial stuff through the door quickly. It's removing that procurement friction. And thereafter, it's using Bytes to do this very clever agent accounting process to deliver a more enterprise class subscription for you, which should be fast and efficient and agile. And if you've got spend commitment into AWS, your marketplace spend and your services spend through Bytes is going to be helping you retire that commitment also. So again, lots more details available, conversations for another time, but hopefully food for thought. And I've given you some understanding as to why Bytes is leaning on this digital marketplace solution. And that's pretty much it for me. Just to give you, the headlines, this is about agility and governance, balancing agility and governance with flexible pricing terms and still using the services that you've got from Bytes, but through this digital marketplace solution. And Simon's going to give you a quick poll in a second, but now it's over to Simon, the practice director, to take you through Bytes' AWS services.
Great. Thanks, Darren. Thanks for that. Really useful presentation, I hope. I think a poll is due to come up now. It's a new platform, so I'm assuming it might be happening in the background. But just to introduce myself, so I'm Simon Walker, so I'm the practice director here at Bytes. Working with AWS now for just over 3 years and growing the practice out quite significantly, actually. So obviously from pretty much a standing start, we've become one of the fastest growing partners Amazon's ever had in the UK. We've kind of climbed up the ranks in terms of our consultancy expertise. So we're an advanced consultancy partner. We've got a whole bunch of competencies. What that means to our customers is we get access to a lot of different programs, particularly funding programs. So funding programs within Amazon are extensive and incredibly useful for organizations that want to move quickly on a project but don't necessarily have the budget, which in this day and age we're seeing a lot of requirement for. Just to give you an example on a funding program we recently just completed with the customer, the project was around $300,000 worth of costs to migrate them into AWS for about 300 odd workloads, and Amazon actually funded $450,000. So the customer didn't actually have to pay a single penny to do the migration itself, and had credits against their workloads as well. So we're very good at these funding programs. So if you have got a project in mind, please come and chat to us. In terms of our capabilities, we've got over 120, I think 140 actually managed service customers now, where we look after their cost optimization and billing, and some of them we're offering full end-to-end 24/7 managed services. We bill around $2.2 million a month of AWS services now, and that's growing rapidly on a month-to-month basis as organizations look to us to help them with cost optimization within the cloud. And back end of last year, we won an award, Microsoft AWS Partner of the Year, for moving Microsoft workloads. So considering of our early relationship with Amazon, again, great accolade to get. So in terms of how we built the practice, we put a huge focus on the 5 core pillars: security, reliability, performance, operational excellence, and cost. Where possible, we use native tools within Amazon because it keeps things simple, and cloud can be complex because of all the different features and services available. But then we pull into partners like Checkpoint and CrowdStrike around the security element, because the cloud doesn't do everything. It does a lot really good stuff, particularly around scale, automation, orchestration, but it doesn't do everything. And there is some key responsibilities of customers when moving into the cloud, which we'll go into a bit more detail of. In terms of the services that we offer for AWS, we pretty much cover the entire life cycle now. So customers looking to move to AWS or modernize within AWS. So that's organizations that may have just lifted and shifted and then are scratching their heads why it's so expensive still. It's because they're not really doing cloud the way cloud was designed. So we often get engaged in modernization projects to look at serverless containerized architecture. And again, as you'd expect, there's a funding program for that from Amazon to support that initiative. They really want customers to be optimized within the cloud. Optimization within the cloud is probably how we launched all of our services. A big part of what we do is looking at customer spend and making sure that they're not overspending. Encourage you, if you have got some Amazon spend, to talk to us about carrying out a snapshot. It's a completely free of charge service where we look at what you're doing within the cloud and give you some tips on how to save money and actually hopefully move you onto one of our Cloud Report, Cloud Optimize services. Some of these services are free because Amazon will fund them as well for certain workloads. So definitely come and chat to us about that. A recent service that we've launched is partner-led enterprise support. So this is us offering Amazon enterprise support services 24/7. Massive benefit of this is if you want enterprise support from Amazon, there's a minimum requirement of $15,000 a month, which most customers won't ever be close to. So often when we bring customers onto this, they'll be saving $11,000 to $12,000 a month. But also if you're looking at an EDP, you have to have enterprise support from Amazon and have that $15,000 cost. A lot of the time that wipes out a lot of the savings that you potentially would have got as part of that enterprise discount program. So with us, you don't have that charge. We deliver that as part of our cost optimization and managed enterprise support services, all fully backed by Amazon as well. So moving on to, AWS Security. So the AWS Security element, Amazon does a lot of stuff, some really good stuff, but it's really good to call out some of the stuff it doesn't do. So intrusion preventions, there isn't that within the cloud. So you do need additional tools, particularly for compliance. A lot of our customers do need this for PCI or other ISO-based compliance. Multi-layer firewall protection, log-friendly analysis, infrastructure mapping and visualization, all of these things that you're used to probably on-premise using appliances and products like Checkpoint previously. You obviously don't have that. It's not as mature as those types of entities in the cloud. Data loss prevention is a big one, which was huge on premise, and in the cloud it doesn't quite translate. So again, additional tooling is required. Antivirus, anti-malware, very common on premise. You'd think twice about it, but again, you've got to think about that in the cloud. Centralizing security policy management comes up a lot. So organizations that have multiple clouds and on-premise do need a central place. Otherwise, you've got your engineers and architects looking at different areas. So consolidating that is really key, and unifying that kind of security and cloud management with on-premise and the cloud is really key. There are some really good features within Amazon which often don't get called out enough, I don't think. So AWS Security Hub, Artifact, and Trusted Advisor. So there's a whole bunch of compliances, and you don't need to know what all those compliances are. You just need to know the tools that can effectively review those tools. We use Cloud Health for our cost optimization, which does an element of security as well as cost optimization. But AWS Artifact is one of those tools that not many people talk about, but we found it really useful for organizations that are getting auditors to come in and look at what they're doing within the cloud and saying, okay, well, can you show us how Amazon does that? I need to see their policy on that. AWS Artifact is the place to go for that. So the table on the left here, shared responsibility kind of comes up a lot. And on the left, I think it's a really nice, clear way of representing it. You can see on-prem, essentially in the blue, that is effectively the customer. Customer's responsible for pretty much everything. In infrastructure as a service on the cloud, you're still responsible for a lot of things. It's not simply chuck it over the fence and everything's all good in the world. As you go down the stack towards platform as a service and software as a service, those things do start to become more the cloud provider's responsibility, but there's still responsibility from the customer. And this goes with all clouds, really. It's not just AWS. But on the right hand side, we can simply show you that essentially if it's data center related, then it's going to be the cloud responsibility. If it's data access, backups, then it's essentially the customer's responsibility. So the security in the cloud is customer, and security of the cloud is the cloud provider. I think that's quite an easy way to kind of remember it in and of. And I think if you do that, then you won't go far wrong. There's a whole host of different things to consider when we're talking about security in the cloud. I think it's just too easy to say, oh yeah, we've got a firewall there, it's all job done. So when we're doing consultancy for our customers around AWS platforms and design, we talk a lot about this layered security and strength in depth of the security. And we're not suggesting that you would have every single one of these in each of those layers of security, but you would expect to have one or two. I.e., you can't just rely on a user and password firewall, because as we said at the start of this, a lot of the issues that come about users maybe not renewing their passwords, not using MFAs. And we do a lot of snapshots, as I mentioned earlier. And one of the biggest things we come up with is customers' MFAs not working, or they've been switched off, or passwords haven't been updated for over 180 days on their kind of critical production workloads in the cloud. So we spend a fair amount of time with customers working through what their security posturing needs to be and what the tools are available, and then working with our partners to kind of hit those compliance. So one of the areas that I'd kind of like you to kind of consider and take away, a lot of organizations haven't used landing zones. Concept is, again, both in Azure and AWS, but it is a way of capturing a lot of the security stuff that you can do up front. Amazon recently released AWS Control Tower in London, so we've been doing a lot of projects for customers to utilize that, where it essentially pre-bakes everything. So a lot of the security across all these levels is done for you. So that creates the platform in which you will host your applications on. So it takes a lot of the guesswork out of it. I'd say one of the most projects we do is around AWS and landing zones, making sure the customers have that really secure base, and everything that gets put inside those landing zones already have the pre-baked security controls within it, and they can be tweaked and adjusted per customer and what they require, and the different teams that might need access to that. So again, one to call out, if you haven't got a landing zone, haven't done landing zones, or thinking about moving into Amazon, landing zones and control tower is the way we would recommend. Final slide from me. So I guess the takeaway, as we're a well-architected certified partner of Amazon, Amazon will actually fund us to do well-architected reviews. During those reviews, we spend a lot of time talking about security. We cover all the 5 pillars, and we can put more focus on certain areas, but it's fully funded, which is important. The actual environments don't have to be in Amazon either. So if you've got an on-premise environment that you're thinking of moving to Amazon, and you're like, actually, I wouldn't mind knowing what that might look like, we can do a migration assessment, which is called NOLA in Amazon language. It's fully funded. We can combine it with a well-architected review and give you a broad picture of how much it's going to cost in Amazon and what it might look like in Amazon as well. And also we can talk about the security aspects of what you would need within that environment. And that's me. So I'll hand back to Luke.
Thanks, Simon. So we're just going to open up to Q&A, and whilst we wait for some questions, probably just touch on the polls that were coming up on the screen. So I guess positively, most of our customers do realise that AWS could be, or migrations could be fully funded. So it sounds like you guys are doing a great job in letting people know that. So yeah, I mean, I don't know if there's any more information apart from what we discussed, but we will come back to you on that in terms of the follow-ups. And actually, a few on the second poll, there are high percentages of customers that would like to take a look at the migration or the OLA assessment. So,
oh, brilliant! We'll follow those up. And we'll contact those individually. It's a really, really nice process, actually, the whole migration assessment, because it takes the mystery out of what it's going to look like in the cloud. And you can actually have, we do a presentation at the end of it that kind of shows you exactly what it's going to look like and the different options available. And what it helps with is going back to Amazon and working out what that funding might look like, so you can get a proper TCO that can be presented to the board as opposed to a kind of a finger in the air.
actually, there is a question on the OLA. So, what is the typical timeline in terms of doing the migration assessment and calculating funding?
Yeah, so it's a pretty quick process, and it does depend on the extent the customer wants to go to. But as a broad brush, would say deployment of the tool takes around half an hour to an hour on the customer side with one of our engineers. Once it's deployed, it runs for a period of about 2 weeks, 3 weeks. And then after that, we will compile a report, a presentation together and present it back. So end to end, no more than 4 weeks, but sometimes it can be a bit quicker. But if you kind of factor in a 4 week from deployment of tool to getting the report and presenting it, probably about 4 weeks.
Okay, perfect. Are there any sort of prereqs that customers should think about?
Yeah, so in terms of funding, Amazon will fund anything above 50 workloads, so 50 servers essentially. So if you've got 50 servers, Amazon will fully fund it. In terms of the well-architected reviews, we can apply that per workload. So if you've got, for example, 3 or 4 workloads that are candidates, we would combine that with a migration assessment and the well-architected reviews, and that gives us a larger pot of money to do a bit more work, so we can actually potentially build high-level designs as well. And then obviously we'll give you an indication of how much funding is available on that. It is typically focused around Windows workloads being migrated. However, if you have got Linux workloads that need migrated, there are other funding programs that we can tap into, and we can still use the well-architected review to look at those workloads and what that might look like. But bar that, there isn't too many prerequisites. It runs on Linux and Windows infrastructure, VMware, Hyper-V, all supported.
Great, thanks, Simon. So there are a few more questions coming in, but we'll probably save them to the end with the whole panel. But I appreciate your time, and Darren, obviously some great advice from the AWS Marketplace point of view. Yeah, if there are any further questions, please do put them in the chat box, because we will answer them at the end when we join back up. But I'm just now going to pass over to Stuart Green from Checkpoint.
Hello, thank you again. If you were with us on the previous session, thanks for following up and coming on to this session too. We're going to have a look at some of the other parts of the technology in Checkpoint's portfolio, specifically to address security concerns in cloud. Now, a bit of a disclaimer, we're calling this one Securing AWS. Like I said in the previous session, we're not implying that the cloud platforms are insecure, only that there are a number of things you can do to increase that level of security and make sure you are covering all of the different areas that you possibly can. And we've got technologies to build on the great tools that are provided by Amazon and AWS, and allow you to take that a bit further into some of the different services and technologies that they don't yet cover. So what we're going to look at, a bit of a background on Checkpoint. Most people are familiar with Checkpoint, but in case you're not, I'll give you a brief tour of our history. What the technology we can offer helps you to do in AWS, and a brief bit to follow up on the end is around a document that we provide called our Cloud Security Blueprint, which is a really useful document if you're thinking of moving any workloads or processes into public cloud. So to start with, Checkpoint, you probably know us as the firewall company. We've been around for 27, I think 28 years this September, and we've got a good amount of recognition in the industry. So we've got here various features in the Gartner Magic Shapes, and then NSS Labs have given us many a favorable report into our technology when it comes to things like breach prevention. So our threat prevention technology such as IPS, anti-bot, anti-malware, and how all of those work together to benefit you as a customer in preventing advanced threats in a number of different environments. Also recently, we've had coverage on our endpoint, mobile, and cloud solutions too, which is great to see that the whole technology portfolio is getting recognition across the industry. So it's all very well and good you sitting here and listening to a vendor saying that their technology is great, but to have it verified independently within the market is far more powerful, I think. Partnerships with AWS. AWS are a great partner with Checkpoint, and we've got a really good relationship with these guys. We feature in multiple different technology areas within AWS. We have a number of different named partnerships as well. We've got integrations with some of the native tools as well. So it's not a case of our tool versus their tool. There is a real sense of collaboration when it comes to using Checkpoint technology in public cloud. And we can feed some of our intelligence into the platform-specific tools like Security Hub, Inspector, Guard Duty, and some of the other cloud-specific technologies can draw from flow logs and CloudTrail, which I'll cover shortly. We support a number of different licensing and procurement models, as was covered in the previous set of slides as well. CPPO, consulting partner private offers. Hopefully I've got that term right. Cloud is full of acronyms and I trip over them all the time. And also marketplace offering, as well as the traditional methods of procuring licenses in the BYOL sense too. So we've got a number of different ways that you can get a hold of our technology. So I mentioned Checkpoint in the context of firewalls, which is probably what most people are familiar with this with. We have got a number of different pillars and technologies within Checkpoint now, and the CloudGuard brand is what looks after, not surprisingly, cloud technology. So a real quick overview for what we do cover before I get into some of the more specific cloud points. We cover cloud from the network threat prevention, what we call CloudGuard network security. This has been called a number of different things in the past, as you probably are aware. Checkpoint like changing our names for things quite regularly. This is our tried and trusted network security or firewall technology. It's been adapted to run in public cloud and take advantage of a number of changes in those environments to make it more adaptive and more agile. Then we've got cloud security and posture management. What was CloudGuard Dome 9? What was Dome 9 before it was CloudGuard Dome 9. This is the element of our technology suite which allows you to get visibility and control of the various assets and configurations that you've got in your public cloud environments. Then we've got web application and API protection in the AppSec product. So this is focusing on your layer 7 protections, your OWASP type concerns, where if you are worried about being subjected to various application validation attacks like SQL injection, command injection, cross-site scripting, too many to mention, that's a whole different presentation in itself. But that's one area that we've got a new technology to help you address. Then we've got workload protection covering containers and serverless. Talk a little bit about serverless in some of the slides coming up. And then to wrap it all up, we've got cloud intelligence and threat hunting, which is the idea of taking all of the indicators, whether it's log files in the form of network logs or application interactions through the API side of things. We have a solution that allows you to get visibility and perform threat hunting across the various logging methods and features that you have in the different cloud platforms. So CloudGuard network security. We'll start off with what you're probably most familiar with. So we support AWS amongst a number of other cloud platforms on the public cloud side of things. And we've also got offerings for private cloud. So private cloud being NSX, ACI, OpenStack, or the more traditional offering where you take the Checkpoint software and you install it on a server of your choice. Checkpoint CloudGuard Network Security is the cloud name for our software that runs on an environment that isn't our hardware. So it's the same technology, you still get all of the same features that you do with our hardware offering, but with the flexibility of running it in a private cloud environment or a public cloud environment, wherever you want to run it, that is supported and you get the same experience, more or less, regardless of where you're running it. Some of the benefits of that I'll get on to very shortly. So when it comes to deploying, I think we've missed a couple of slides here. Let's have a look. No, that's fine. We'll get on to it. One of the benefits of deploying Checkpoint across the different environments is the experience is largely the same. So to us, the key is in the name, Checkpoint Software Technologies Limited. The jump from running on hardware to running in a public or private cloud environment, it was very small in that we take our software and we just run it in a different environment. It's running on a virtual machine. If it's an AWS, it runs on EC2. If it's on one of the other cloud providers, it runs on their equivalent of virtual compute. But from the customer and the business perspective, you get the same threat prevention technology running that you're familiar with. You get the same firewall rules, you get the same IPS, you get the same anti-bot protection, but with a number of changes that make it more useful and more adaptive in the cloud environments. Oh, I do love PowerPoint animations. Let's skip through all those. I'll cover some of those points later on. So how we deploy it in AWS. This is one of the changes we've made to make it very applicable to public cloud, in that we've got a number of methods that you can use to deploy it into AWS. The most common of those is to use CloudFormation. So if you go to the Checkpoint User Center, which is where we store all of our knowledge base articles, all of our FAQs, all of our documentation, we've got a page dedicated to making it as easy as possible to deploy this technology into your environments. So you choose the template that matches what you want to deploy, whether it's a single gateway, a cluster of gateways, an auto scaling group, or a management station into existing networks, new networks. We've got deployment templates that match a number of different scenarios. So it's a case of logging into the user center, clicking on launch stack, and then filling in the options to make it relevant to the context of your public cloud environment. From there, you go grab a cup of coffee or two and come back, and the environment is ready for you to start interacting with and pushing your existing checkpoint policies into, giving you a really easy way to achieve consistency when it comes to making sure that you have the same business policies applied in public cloud that you do in your traditional networks or your data center networks. Wherever that workload is requiring security, that policy can adapt to the environment that it's running in. So that leads us on to what the policy looks like across those environments. Now, if you're a Checkpoint customer, this is probably something you're quite familiar with. This is the security policy that's been in Smart Dashboards, Smart Policies, Smart Console. It's had a number of different names over the 28 years that we've been providing this. But in essence, the experience is largely the same. When you start to look more closely, which you might have to do here because it's quite small on the slide, but you've got the combination of traditional objects with more relevant cloud objects. So on the right-hand side, where we've got the column that says install on, this contains a mixture of physical appliances, open servers, other Checkpoint technology, but also AWS is one of the options in here. So again, when you're installing your security policy into AWS or one of the other public or private cloud environments, it doesn't matter to us. It's just another Checkpoint gateway running somewhere slightly different. You get to manage your Checkpoint policy, which you're probably quite familiar with, just in a different environment. So there isn't that learning curve or risk associated with picking up new tools and adapting how they work in a new environment. It's a case of, I understand Checkpoint, I understand the tools that I have and have been using for many years. I push policy to AWS and it's enforced in exactly the same way. There are a few different approaches to how you deploy that technology into the public cloud, but once you've got around that, you've got a security gateway running there, which is able to take your Checkpoint policies and apply it, enforce it, report on it in exactly the same way that you're familiar with. If you want to mix into that application control, URL filtering, IPS, DLP, identity awareness, that makes absolutely no difference to Checkpoint. It's another gateway, and you can mix and match all of those policy elements as freely as you please. Posture management. This is one of the slightly newer areas for us and isn't necessarily something that you might have heard Checkpoint talking about. Now, it's something I talk about a lot because it's part of my day job, and I talk to customers a lot about helping them gain visibility of their workloads and their assets in the public cloud environments. This is the technology that we acquired probably about 2.5 years ago now, which was Dome 9. It's now been renamed into CloudGuard CSPM, Cloud Security and Posture Management. This type of solution gives you a really easy way of taking stock of what you've got, not just in AWS, but across multiple public cloud environments, plus Kubernetes. So if you're a customer who is on the entry level in public cloud and you've got a few workloads that have been migrated using one of the services that were spoken about earlier, this can help give you a level of comfort and reassurance that what you've got deployed in the public cloud is meeting best practices. if you're moving on from that into trying to meet regulatory compliance frameworks like GDPR, PCI DSS, ISO, SOX, etc., any of the fun regulated frameworks that you have to comply with, it can give you that automatic assessment to say what you've got here with the configuration that we can pull in, that does or doesn't match with the rule sets that we give you out of the box. So you don't have to worry about constructing a complex framework to apply to what you've got deployed in public cloud. We can do that hard work for you. So like was mentioned earlier, again, on one of the slides, you use the tools to assess what you've got in the public cloud rather than having to learn GDPR and learn the different articles and what technical controls they relate to. We take that hard work and we do that for you. Visualization, this is a really important part of any security and posture management, and it's been talked about a lot already. I've talked about it. The other guys here have talked about it too. It's really important to know what you've got in any environment, particularly in public cloud, where so much of the deployment process is abstracted away and taken care of for you. We give you a number of tools to visualize what your public cloud estate looks like and what that means in terms of assets, but also in terms of security exposure. So we've got a number of tools which take the native tools and consolidate them all into one view and say, with all the security groups that you've got applied to all of the different assets, these are the potential risks that we expose to your public cloud environment and what ports you've got open to what assets and whether or not that maps to what you were expecting. A lot of the misconfiguration that happens in public cloud is down to unexpected behaviors of some of the cloud native controls. So when you are putting a web service up, for example, you might not be aware of what ports are open. We provide tools to make it very clear what that level of risk is that is opened up from providing that asset in the public cloud environment. And that's a screenshot of the tool that I was talking about. I should have known that was coming up. Anyway, continuous compliance. So this is an interesting step in the cloud posture management journey for customers. So if, for example, you've deployed this tool and you've had an assessment come back that says you are X% compliant with a particular compliance framework, that's great. And that gives you a snapshot in time. The next step in that journey is moving from running assessments manually with your keyboard and mouse and clicking on buttons to doing it automatically. So you instruct the platform to keep an eye on what you've got running in public cloud and to automatically notify you if there's any deviation from the baseline that you have defined. So say, for example, you're concerned with something like GDPR, rather than running an assessment on an ad hoc basis, what this allows you to do is be notified when there is a change to your posture. So say, for example, you only want storage facilities for files to be within a particular region, let's say the EU. Anything outside of the EU, which appears in your cloud estate, can automatically generate a notification. You can then take that a step further to generate automatic reactions. So rather than creating extra work for somebody that might have to log in and fix that manually, you can optionally choose to automatically remediate that. So you can trigger an API call out of the platform to fix certain common things that might crop up, like applying security groups or making sure assets outside of your chosen region of operation are automatically shut down or even deleted. I'll click through these quite quickly because I'm cautious we are approaching the end of our session. There are a number of tools available within the posture management suite to give you not just visibility, but control over what you do in your public cloud. The guys at Bytes are more than happy to run through this with you. They offer a service that gives you a snapshot of what your public cloud level of risk is. And if need be, that's something we can help out with as well. Cloud is an ever-evolving environment, and it's very difficult to keep up to date with not just the services, but the best practices around securing those services and the tools available to do so. So the CloudGuard platform is there to help make that journey as easy as possible. And we can provide the technology. Bytes and the other partners are able to provide the expertise in using those tools and advising you on what types of things you should be focusing your efforts on. I'm going to try and go through the rest of the slides very quickly before I get told to hurry up. Next up, as I can battle with all of these animations. I've mentioned AppSec, our API and app protection technology. This gives you layer 7 protections over your web application workloads and also the APIs that you might have. Typical things, OWASP style attacks, SQL injection, command injection, CServe, cross-site scripting. There are a number of application level vulnerabilities that need to be addressed in public cloud. And this is a really simple solution without the typical overheads of maintaining a WAF solution. The AppSec agent is something that you can store on or close to the workload and employs various machine learning elements to automatically adapt your protection profile to what we detect that workload is doing. Again, that could be a whole different talk in itself, and I'm happy to talk to you if anyone's interested in that particular solution. It's not what we're talking about directly today, but speak to Bytes, speak to us, and we'd be happy to talk to you about that. Then serverless. This is something which is quite unique to our solution. And if you are on the more mature or advanced end of adapting public clouds architectures, serverless is something which is, generally speaking, quite difficult to secure because it doesn't conform to traditional deployment methodologies, i.e. you can't just slap a firewall in front of it and call it secure. What we do for that is we have a Lambda native approach where we can integrate with serverless functions and also other serverless technologies and different cloud platforms where we have a tight code level integration which gives you visibility of any vulnerabilities that exist at the code level. So whether that's vulnerable inputs or vulnerabilities that have come in from the inclusion of third-party modules. So if there was a module in your Node.js Lambda function, for example, that had a known CVE associated with it, we could alert you to that. And taking the platform in a slightly different direction, if you were looking to secure a Lambda function from a CI/CD or a DevOps automated deployment process, we could pick up on those vulnerabilities and prevent them from ever appearing in your public cloud presence. Again, that is a whole different technology area where I'm more than happy to talk to you about it in a lot of detail, but I've kind of talked enough, so I'm going to have to go through these quite quickly now. All part of the wider suite, and it all integrates together to give you that uniform view of what's going on in your public cloud environment. Should have got rid of some of these animations. Containers. This is a very new part of our solution, and probably haven't got time to cover all of the areas in this, but if cloud containers, cloud workloads, and Kubernetes is something that you're looking at, again, more on the advanced side of cloud deployments and cloud adoption. It's not something we see all of our customers picking up on right away. We're kind of on the lift and shift side of things for the majority of our customers, but this is something which is increasing in popularity. We're able to help you secure your workloads when it comes to deploying them in Kubernetes environments. We've got a number of technologies around this that help secure the life cycle of container environments, and we can pick up on image scanning, admission control, and runtime protection within the Kubernetes environment. Those are all quite in-depth topics in themselves, and the 4 bullet points that I've got on here probably don't do it justice, but at this point, if you're aware of it, that it's something Checkpoint can help with, and it's outside of the firewall remit, which is what most people come to Checkpoint for, that's great, and I'll be happy to talk to you in more detail about that as well. Cloud intelligence, I touched on this in the previous session. Taking in all of this log data and all of the intelligence that we generate across these different platforms can be quite overwhelming. So we do provide a service as part of CloudGuard, which allows you to aggregate all of this information and generate distilled specific alerts and reactions based on all of this intel that we generate. So if you wanted to say something simple like, show me where I've got something malicious in my environment, we can boil that down to a query that says, show me where there is something malicious in the environment. And it's no more complicated than that. In fact, the actual query is malicious equals true. And that will show you where any of your cloud assets have been targeted by something on the internet that we know to be malicious, or more importantly, if any of your cloud workloads have been observed generating malicious connections outbound to something on the internet. That generally is more interesting and more urgent in terms of a customer trying to address security needs in their environment. So we can perform that very quickly and very easily in cloud environments. I think I've run out of time now. Luke, how am I doing?
Yeah, we've got probably 30 seconds left.
30 seconds. Wow. Okay. I'll wrap it up there. I'll keep clicking through. To summarize, the one point that I opened with at the start about the cloud security blueprint, there is a document from Checkpoint which aims to address some of the difficulties that customers face when they're moving to public cloud in terms of general thoughts. It's not specific to AWS, it's not specific to Azure or GCP. It's things to consider when you're trying to make your cloud deployment scalable, secure, and give you the ability to automate that deployment into public cloud. I think there is, if it's not there now, a selection of links with documentation and various collaterals that we provide for you to sort of take off and do some further reading on. It's a really good document. It's not written specifically biased, even towards Checkpoint when it comes to adopting public cloud, but it is a good document and it gives you some thinking points, if nothing else, when it comes to adopting different technologies in cloud and how to help you architect your move to the cloud in the future to make sure you're not falling foul of any pitfalls or gotchas later on down the line. I'll stop now. I think I've spoken enough. Thank you very much. Some of these bits I'll go through in a bit more detail in the third and final session for the day. Luke, I will stop and hand over to you now.
Thank you, Stuart. Appreciate that. And really good content there. I really took away a lot of valuable kind of information, especially around continuous monitoring of your security platform. Don't just look at it and feel like you're compliant one day. It could change a minute later, and I feel like that's really important in cloud environments. What we're going to do is we're going to hold Q&A till the panel end, and so we're going to kind of wrap up your session. I'm going to hand over to Justin, but just before we do, just on the poll, we had 100% of people named Checkpoint's global intelligence database correctly, so well done, everyone.
Good.
So next session is going to be Justin Harris from CrowdStrike, and talk obviously about their platform and their workload approach to AWS security. So over to Justin. I think I'll mute Justin.
Thank you. So good morning, everyone. Thank you for taking the time to allow me to speak today. So first off, a little bit about CrowdStrike and myself. So I'm Justin Harris. I'm a solutions architect in CrowdStrike's cloud team. And the team that I run is responsible for generating all the cloud integrations. So every place where we can possibly integrate our services with the cloud infrastructure, myself and my team are responsible for doing that. So a little bit about CrowdStrike. Very well known, very well in the EDR, XDR space as one of the top endpoint protection vendors. CrowdStrike itself is built in AWS. The whole service that you would run and customers connect to, and the CrowdStrike console is all hosted in AWS. It has been since the day the company was founded. So we're a very large customer of AWS, and AWS is actually a very large customer of ours as well. So there's a symbiotic relationship between the two. So we've had a lot of expertise in operating in the cloud. We've been operating in the cloud for a number of years, really since the cloud was funded. And what we've done relatively recently is start to expose some of those cloud security products to the market. So when we look at the Falcon platform, it really started from the point of view of endpoint protection. And through the product lifecycle, we've really launched a number of services that complement that, all the way from threat hunting to managed threat management services that we can offer as well with Falcon Overwatch. And what we're talking about today is our cloud services. And really, there's three products that I wanted to focus on today. The primary focus of what I'm going to be talking about is cloud workload protection. So Easiest way to think about cloud workload protection is essentially CrowdStrike software running on workloads in the cloud, whether that's instances or containers. It really doesn't matter. I've then got another product called Discover, and I'll cover some more details on that. But Discover is very much focused on helping an administrator who is at a threat intel team or an incident response team who is constantly working in the Falcon platform to gain better visibility and understanding of where they have workloads deployed. So we've had Discover for private data centers since the product was launched, and we've had Discover for cloud environments for about the last 18 months. But it gives you good coverage and it gives you good information about where those workloads are and what the relative threat is. And then we have our Horizon product, which is very similar to all the things that Stuart covered earlier. With it's essentially a product in the CSPM market. Okay. So in terms of cloud discovery, similar to a CSPM type product where it's gaining you visibility of what you have in the cloud environment, but it's not particularly focused on compliance. Really, it's focused on delivering information to a CrowdStrike administrator. So it will give you the context of where your workloads are running, how many of those workloads are currently protected by CrowdStrike. So that may be EC2 instances in AWS. It may well be containers running in Fargate or in EKS. So it'll give you a general sense of coverage. It'll also give you more information about the configuration of those hosts as well. So similar sort of things about what security groups have been applied to those instances, what volumes are attached to those instances, are the volumes encrypted. So all the kind of things you would expect to do following best practice, but very much focused on the endpoint itself and the type of information that is useful to someone who is possibly investigating an incident associated with an endpoint. So where Discover is useful is that it's pulling the same sort of information that we get from the cloud API. So it's constantly polling AWS and asking for the context of where that device is deployed and what the state of it is. But it's also merging that data with the data we're actually connecting on the endpoint itself. So from an incident response point of view, it will give you the context of what security groups have been applied, but then also what the actual running processes are associated with that endpoint. And then in terms of if there is an incident, it would also give you a full network analysis of every socket that was created around the incident. So if imagine the server is breached or we detect some malware, it will then trigger an incident. And as part of that incident collection, we will collect a lot of the metadata about the network sockets that were created out of that host, and also obviously the processes that originated that socket. So it gives you really good information to tell you whether the traffic that you're seeing is a good traffic or bad traffic, or it emanates out of that malware. Most of the time we're going to block that malware, but it'll give you full network analysis of the before and after that actual incident occurred. So Discover very much focused on giving you better context around where that endpoint is and what's associated, other mitigating controls that have been associated with that. So CrowdStrike itself, it's well known in the market for actual runtime protection on those nodes. There's a number of services we offer. Easiest way to describe it is it's an EDR, XDR platform. So EDR itself, prevention, custom IOAs. So custom IOAs are, we refer to IOAs as indicators of attack. An example where we may well use custom IOAs in a cloud environment is to extend protection around lateral movement post-breach. So if we find that a host may well have been breached through lost credentials, so someone has gained a foothold onto a device and has managed to remote shell in. An example of where a custom IOA can come in useful is we can track the full process tree. So imagine you have an instance that through IAM permissions is able to read and write to an S3 bucket. that will be allowed because the process originating that S3 read and write will originate on the host itself. What an IOA can do, custom IOA can do, is block that execution of that AWS CLI command call if it originates through an SSH shell. So again, by providing those controls on the host itself and having full visibility of the process tree and the originating process, we can provide additional security controls. So that's one of the a good example of where a custom IOA can help to prevent lateral movement if you are breached in any way. So in terms of the Falcon sensor itself, we say one platform for every cloud. So it is the same binaries that are applied across all platforms. So if we look at a Windows physical server, a Windows host in GCP or Azure or AWS, it's the same binary. And that applies to the private data center as well. And then if we look at the container environment, there's two options we use there. So if it is a Kubernetes environment or a Docker environment where you have access to the underlying node, we would again use the same Linux sensor as we apply everywhere else, and we would give you the same visibility. So what that looks like from the CrowdStrike administrator's point of view is they have the same visibility, they have the same detection capabilities, they have the same response capabilities. So from the CrowdStrike administrator's point of view, the technology or the hosting environment underneath that's actually hosting the environment doesn't make any difference. They don't have to change their practices in terms of what they need to do because you're getting the same data. So containers themselves, I wanted to cover in a little bit more detail. So for some time now, we've had the ability to secure container environments where users have control of the underlying node. So if you're building a Kubernetes environment yourself, or you in the past maybe using Docker Swarm, or you had access to the underlying node, and at that point you could deploy the traditional Falcon sensor as part of the in what we call kernel mode. So it was part of the operating system. So it gave you protection all the way through to the node and through the running container, because we saw the full process tree all the way through. There are many container environments now. Fargate will be a good example in AWS, where it's a fully managed service. So you no longer have the ability to install software into the underlying node, because AWS is essentially taking care of that for you. So we recently launched a container security solution. It's now called the Container Sensor, that runs in user space within those containers themselves. So it's specifically designed to work with AWS Fargate, with some of the GKA environments like Autopilot, and with operating systems like Google COS. So what we're trying to do here is give you the ability to provide container security across whichever container environment you choose to use. And we're seeing a shift very much from customers doing their own thing, or building container environment, or maybe using OpenShift, and then moving more to a fully managed solution like Fargate. In terms of visibility, in terms of the detection capability, in terms of raw security, you get the same essentially data from a sensor running in a container as you do from a sensor running on a physical host. So in terms of the ability to respond or actually block malware or zero-day exploits, the same capabilities exist within a container as exists on a physical host. We do actually also provide additional container dashboards. And again, that's very much focused around giving you better context around the containers that you have running. So what containers you have running, what software packages are applied to those containers, what vulnerabilities exist in those containers, which node groups they're running on, which underlying software builds they're on, what the container image version is, so the unique hash that's associated with the container. All that type of information is there and useful, often as additional metadata that's useful in terms of incident response. So as part of our move into container security, we've also talked about this shifting left model. And I know Stuart mentioned it slightly earlier, where we're seeking to now shift or start working with other parts of the business who may be interested in security. So traditionally, a DevOps team, when you talk to them about security, they are very, very focused on shift left, which is essentially engineering out software deficiencies very early in the software lifecycle. So when we talk about it, and that can be anything from bug fixes to resolving functional requirement issues or anything in the software lifecycle, they want to try and get it as early as possible before it reaches the runtime. When we look at that from a security point of view, what we can do, what's unique to containers, is we can provide image scanning capabilities on that. So the nice thing about a container environment and a Docker file is that it will describe very accurately all the software packages that go into building that container, and that's essentially in a bunch of layers. What the container image scanning will do is give you visibility of the software vulnerabilities that exist within that package, and then allow them to make changes in that. It's something we've done for a number of years within the Falcon product itself. We've had a similar product called Spotlight that's been available really for a large amount of time with CrowdStrike, but that was very much focused on vulnerabilities of software packages that we've discovered when we've run an inventory on the underlying host itself. So really it's providing the same sort of information, but in a slightly different context for a slightly different group of users. So when we apply that shift left methodology to the Falcon dashboard, essentially what it's doing, again, is really just providing additional context and additional metadata to the detection data that we're already providing at runtime. So what we're trying to do is provide a security team with good information early in their software build lifecycle, but also giving them excellent runtime protection and protection against zero-day malware that some of the traditional well-established container security products in the market don't do. So the traditional container security market has, again, been very focused on working with the DevOps teams and engineering out software deficiencies and vulnerabilities early in the product cycle, less focused on the runtime and the zero-day exploit prevention. We've kind of been strong in the zero-day exploit prevention and have now developed tools that provide those development teams with better information. So this is just an example of what you tend to see with a CrowdStrike. We would call it an incident. So typically, CrowdStrike will seek to block on code execution, and it uses a number of different ways of doing that through exploit prevention, machine learning, and AI. There's a number of different technologies that are layered together to provide essentially the protection on the endpoint. What we deliver when we detect an issue is we call it an incident, and what we're delivering in terms of information to the SecOps user is a full process tree that gives you the context of how that exploit was delivered. So it can tell you whether it came over an HTTP daemon, whether it spawned from an HTTP shell. And because we have that full process execution tree, we were able to provide some of those controls that I talked about earlier. So in the case of the custom IOA, because we know an example of an S3 copy of operation, because we know the process that's called that S3 copy operation, and we know that it may have either originated from a bash shell or natively on a Python executable running on the host, we're able to make intelligent decisions about whether that operation to go ahead or not. I've talked about it previously, but we cover vulnerability management for hosts. So this, if we look at the traditional servers in the market, this would have been very much focused on our Spotlight product. But when we look at the container visibility and the shift left, what we're really doing is providing the same context to users. So someone who's comfortable in the CrowdStrike console and has been using CrowdStrike for a number of years expects this type of information to be available to them. And really what we're doing with the container security is adding this data back in so that they have that full view. So that's it from me. Thank you. I'm probably a little bit ahead of time. Hopefully we managed to catch up a little bit of time.
Thanks, Justin. So yeah, if you've got any questions for Justin, just put them in the chat box and we can follow those up. But just while we do, we have got a couple of questions, so I'll just read those out. So first question, how would you recommend installing CrowdStrike on cloud instances?
I think it very much goes back to what our previous speakers were talking about. It's about building cloud right the first time. So using techniques like infrastructure as code. So building everything from a template is going to immediately make your cloud more secure, because you're essentially engineering out the mistakes that can be made that often lead to breaches. So what we do is we provide a number of user guides, templates that customer can use. So one example would be baking the Falcon sensor into a custom AMI, and then essentially building all your workloads off those custom AMIs. Another will be injecting the install script into the user data that we apply in a template. So in the autoscale group, we may well use, again, we've got script examples for all this. If you're using autoscale, we use the instance lifecycle hooks to call scripts to install and uninstall the sensor. And then the last way is, typically if you're in an AWS environment, we would recommend that customers have an existing AWS estate with workloads and they're interested in putting CrowdStrike sensors onto that, will be used to use Systems Manager. So AWS Systems Manager is an excellent tool to do that. We have an integration for that as well. So really we can cover sort of pre-boot, at boot and post-boot. We can cover that installation. So I think it depends on your environment. All will work, and it really depends on where you are in your life cycle.
Perfect. Thank you very much. And it looks like we've got a good bunch of attendees on the call. They got the poll 100% correct around shift left. So well done there, another 100%. So what I will probably do now, because we've got a few questions that relate to multiple speakers, so probably move over to kind of like the panel. So hopefully we can invite the other speakers back on. Perfect. So first question is to Simon from Bytes. So if we work with a partner like Bytes for AWS, do we lose access to our current AWS contracts?
No, nothing like that. Amazon actually have a target to get more customers working with partners, because they kind of realize that they can't possibly service every customer to the degree they need to be serviced. So you don't get any disadvantages of working through a partner, whether that's putting your billing through Bytes, doing projects through Bytes. I mean, Amazon don't actually have any delivering architects. They're all, as I call, kind of theory architects. So they don't have all the blood, sweat and tears of our architects that have done multiple migrations and gone through a lot of the pain of doing those. So yeah, there's no disadvantage of using an organization like Bytes to either do billing or services, managed services support.
Great, thank you very much. This next question, I'm probably going to get an opinion from all three of you, but there's multiple questions around, given there are kind of lots of security or native security tools within AWS, why should customers be looking at a third-party ISV to support their security platform or structure? So potentially start with Justin.
I think it's what you touched on earlier, is that the cloud products cover a lot of areas. So if you look at config, inspector, guard duty, they cover a lot of areas, but they certainly don't cover everything. So if you take the endpoint itself, you are not, with none of the AWS tools, are you going to be able to get visibility of the executing process. So some kind of endpoint protection, whichever vendor you go from, is going to give you that visibility that fills the gap that AWS doesn't provide. If you look at guard duty or flow logs, they're very much focused on network information, but they don't provide the same level of information that a checkpoint firewall would provide in itself. So the cloud tools go so far, and in CrowdStrike, we always talk about the better together message, that it's not a question of using us or the cloud tools. It's just accepting that the cloud providers can't do everything, and they don't pretend to do everything. There are certain areas where you need to fill those gaps, and that's where the ISVs fill in.
Right, thank you. Stuart?
Yeah, I completely agree. The cloud providers all offer a number of tools. Now, one of the things we often get as checkpoint is, oh, I've got IP tables or a basic ACL on whatever my service is. That's enough, right? It's like, well, if you think that the absolute bare minimum is acceptable for you and that's enough to mitigate your risks, then sure, that's fine. But we, like Justin said, we believe that a lot of the vendors and the platforms working together in a better together sense is the best option. So use native tools where you can, that's great, but bolster them with third-party tools that focus on that particular area where they're trying to use their technology. That's where their expertise and their skills are going to be. The cloud platforms do a great job at covering an incredible breadth of services. So why not leave something like security down to the vendors who specialize in only that, where they can focus all of their efforts and all of their time and R&D resources on that specific technology.
And Simon, just from your point of view, living and breathing AWS, what's the...
Yeah, so I think it all very much comes down to compliance and what they have to do. So if they do have compliance, they're in a regulatory type business, then they do need additional tools. The standard tools don't do everything that you could possibly need. We have a lot of customers that do online trading, PCI compliance, or they've got Sarbanes-Oxley requirements, and they need additional stuff. Also, we find customers that have Azure and AWS and on-premise, which is quite common. The engineers are tearing their hair out because they're like, okay, I've got security on this one, I've got security on that one, and it's like, actually, can I just have one consolidated view? So I think wherever we can make things simple with third parties, then we try and recommend that.
Perfect. Yeah, I think I agree. I definitely agree with all of you. I think, and also most customers are kind of in a hybrid state, so using security tools on premise that they can just extend to the cloud, and kind of integrating that with the AWS native tools. And just from a Bytes point of view, that's something we can certainly help with Simon and team, and our security division is around how can we best utilize native tools, because we definitely want to make use of those, but also how do we integrate and automate the tools from CrowdStrike, Checkpoint, to make it kind of seamless, because cloud is very, very seamless. It's very easy to use in the right way and when it's configured correctly. And we just want to make sure that that's kind of seamless for the ISV products as well, integrating. So quite conscious that we are probably in the middle of your lunch or before your lunch. So what we're probably going to do is kind of wrap up today's session. We have got another session today, which is all around hybrid and multi-cloud, looking at your identity and network. So do join us on that one. I think, Stuart, you're on that one as well. And we've obviously got tomorrow's sessions, and hopefully a few are going to join us there. So I'm going to wrap up from a Bytes point of view, but just thank you to Stuart, Justin, and Simon for your keynotes today. It's been really useful.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you, guys. Have a good day.
So just on just how can Bytes help? I think we've kind of touched on it throughout the presentation. But there is a kind of cloud security snapshot to kind of help you get on your way. So it obviously is for customers, designed for customers who are in the cloud already with some workloads in there. Doesn't matter how many workloads. But it's essentially a free assessment to understand your cloud posture or your cloud security posture. It's set up by our engineers. It's very easy to set up, usually within the hour. and we can cover one or multiple cloud providers. So it's not just specific to AWS, it can stem across Azure, Google, and typically we find customers do have a multi-cloud environment, so it's very useful to get that holistic coverage in one space. So that the kind of 3 key areas that we look at throughout that assessment is looking at understanding your visibility. So can you see everything today? Showing you what is out there that you potentially aren't aware of, and also looking at the security side of things in those workloads. Are they configured with the correct security controls? And really diving deep and giving you a good report, which can be used as an exec summary or can go really granular in terms of the level of controls that are actually there. And this doesn't just look at workloads, it can look at network as well. So it gives you a full architecture view of who's talking to what, and is it talking to the outside world, and should it be doing that? We'd also look at the compliance standards. So in the kind of briefing call, would understand what compliance standards you need to adhere to, and we can run the snapshot against those. So if it's PCI, ISO 27001, SOC 2, GDPR, all of these compliance standards we can run the snapshot against and understand where the actual workload is against those, and provide you a full reporting of those. And last but not least, which I've touched on, is the kind of identifying the security risks. So how exposed are you currently that you aren't aware of today? And just going back to Stuart's point, obviously this is a point in time exercise. It will give you a good understanding of where you are today. But what we look to do with our consultants and our engineers is understand how we can mitigate that ongoing. So look at potentially using a tool like CSPM to monitor that on a daily basis, because really the cloud environments do change quite rapidly. So after the snapshot, you'll be provided with the full report, and then we'll move on to kind of like a consultation point of exercise where we'll look at where we can help you move forward. And that might be in security, but it might be just some architecture services that we can deliver through Simon's team from our AWS and cloud team. So the snapshot is free of charge. So do please, I think there's a poll that's going to ask you if you do want to, are you interested in having a call about it, or if you are, just drop us an email following the session, and we can kind of give you a little bit more detail on what that actually involves. So yeah, I think that is today's session. Just going to go to the last slide. We've done Q&A. And that is it. Yeah, so appreciate your time. Obviously, it is just before lunch, so I really do appreciate you joining, and hopefully you found it valuable from all the speakers. Again, just thank all of our speakers from Bytes, Checkpoint, and CrowdStrike today. Really useful. As I said before, the recording is available after the session, which will be in full HD if you have had any issues with the visuals throughout the presentation. And look forward to seeing you on the next couple of events we've got over the next few days. So thank you for your time.